One of Germany's most prominent car builders, NSU established itself as a major builder of automobiles for the European market for over half a century, and today lives on through its eventual merger with Auto Union to create the modern corporate giant that is Audi. The story of NSU begins in 1873, when Christian Schmidt and Heinrich Stoll entered into a partnership to create the Mechanische Werkstätte zur Herstellung von Strickmaschinen, or the mechanical workshop for the manufacture of knitting machines, in Reidlingen an der Donau, though soon the company moved its production facilities to a new factory in Neckarsulm, where the hydropower of the rivers Neckar and Zulm could be used, thus leading to the creation of the Neckarsulmer Strickmaschinenfabrik. After Schmidt's death in 1884, the factory came into the hands of his brother-in-law, Gottlob Banshaf, who decided in 1886 to switch to the manufacture of two-wheeled Banshafs, a potentially new means of transport, and expected to be able to earn more money with bicycles than with knitting machines. The Germania, a velocipede, was the first product after the changeover, and from 1888 onwards, they focused on the manufacture of small bicycles, the Neckarsulmer Fahrradwerke, later NSU Vereinigte Fahrzeugwerke, NSU Werke Aktiengesellschaft, and finally NSU Motorenwerke, producing its first motorized bicycle model in 1901 as the 11.5 horsepower Zadel clip-on engine. Soon their own engine blocks were developed, and their machines were initially sold under the name Neckarsulm or Neckarsulmer Motorrad, but as this name was not intuitive to non-German-speaking customers, the term NSU was adopted instead, the NSU company subsequently delivering their first car during 1905, which was license-built by the Belgian brand Piep, while during World War I, the company produced motorcycles and trucks for the German army. Come the 1930s, NSU was the leading motorcycle maker in the world, the exceptional success of their models soon encouraging the management to want to expand their car-building endeavors from bespoke models to mass-market machines, opening a brand new car factory at Heilbronn in 1928 to build models such as the NSU 630 PS and the NSU 734 PS. Unfortunately, NSU's attempts to break into mass-production car building failed to reach the forecasts hoped by the management, and in combination with the Great Depression, the company board were pressured by the Dresdner Bank, as their primary financial backer, to sell its recently built car factory to Fiat and focus solely on motorbike building, which restarted in 1931 with the Motorzoom, followed in 1936 by the purchase of the Adam Opel motorcycle business. With its motorbikes, NSU achieved great racing success, and many world-famous riders once rode on an NSU, though after the transition of Walter William Moore from Norton to NSU, the bike started to take on a more English aesthetic. Although the last pre-World War II NSU production cars were the 1928 1.6-litre 630 and the 1.8-litre 734 six-cylinder models, NSU did see one final Nazi-era car developed at the behest of the German Chancellor Adolf Hitler, with Ferdinand Porsche, an engineer from Bohemia, being commissioned to design the vehicle that would mobilize the German people, though with the hidden agenda of remobilizing the armed forces of the Reich in preparation for its expansion across Europe. Designed by Porsche, NSU would produce 3 examples of what was dubbed the Porsche Type 32, a rear-engined package featuring torsion bar suspension and an air-cooled engine, these 3 prototypes having much in common with the later Volkswagen Beetle, but due to NSU's continuing financial difficulties, the firm would not be able to accept the production contract for the delivery of these cars. Motorcycle production at NSU would continue until the start of World War II in 1939, during which the auto builder would produce the Kattenkrad NSU HK101, a half-tracked motorcycle with the engine of the Opel Olympia, while the NSU 251 OSL motorcycle became the primary tool for scouts and infantry on all fronts of the conflict. In December 1946, Das Auto reported the company had resumed the manufacture of bicycles and motorbicycles at the heavily damaged Neckarsulm factory, and the HK101 continued to be sold by NSU as an all-terrain vehicle in a civilian version, while in 1947, NSU signed a contract with Innocenti of Italy to produce their Lambretta scooters under license, these Italian-built machines initially being slightly modified, but by 1951 were built entirely in West Germany. By 1955, NSU was the largest volume motorcycle producer in the world, and at the same time held 4 world speed records for motorbikes in 1951, 1953, 1954, and 1955, while in August 1956, Wilhelm Hertz, at the Bonneville Salt Flats in Utah, became the first man to ride a motorcycle faster than 200 miles an hour, this being complemented by the firm's triumphs on the track with the revolutionary 125cc and 250cc racing engines. Come 1957, West Germany was in the midst of the bubble car age, small economical machines that were built to easily circumvent the desperate rations on construction materials and fuel that were affecting German society at all levels, the bubble car being a widespread and popular trend across large swathes of Europe, and one NSU was perfectly equipped to enter thanks to its experience in motorbike building. Further supporting their endeavour to return to car building was the continued joint venture with Fiat at the Heilbronn factory, which was officially known as NSU-Fiat. Fiat at the time developing a new air-cooled 2-cylinder miniature car dubbed the Fiat 600, which was proving to be a success across Europe due to its stylish aesthetic and fuel economy. Based on the 600, NSU began work on the Prinz, which went into production in 1958 and proved to be a skillful piece of mechanical design, its engine being rear-mounted but was very light in weight, being a small air-cooled twin of only 598cc displacement, this power unit being combined with an overhead camshaft to work its inclined valves in hemispherical combustion chambers, and the drive to the camshaft was by eccentrics and straps from the NSU Sportmax motorcycle so as to combine quietness and accuracy. Once it had been rebodied in a style that followed the characteristic of Michelotti, the Prinz proved to be an international hit for NSU, something that was not being experienced by similar small West German cars like the Lloyds and the Goliaths of the Borgward group, with the NSU Prinz being appreciated for its intuitive driving manners that were far more advanced than those of the technologically innovative but dubiously reliable Lloyds. The NSU Prinz was followed by the Sports Prinz of 1958, a 2-seater sports coupe variant of the original car that was styled by Franco Scaglione of the Italian Bertoni studios in Turin, the first 250 of which were built by Bertoni in Italy, while the rest were assembled in Heilbronn at Karosseriewerke Draus, which was later bought by NSU. The Sport Prinz was initially powered by the 583cc Prinz 50 straight-twin engine and was capable of achieving 99 miles an hour, though from late 1962, a 598cc engine was fitted, the NSU Sport Prinz being a highly regarded little car on the European market, despite it having a vague gear change, though regardless of the car being rear-engined, unlike the Porsche 356 and later 911, the presence of the engine behind the cabin didn't make it tail-heavy and presented very positive control. Come 1960, though, NSU was seeking to expand their influence much further into the car market and was reaching the culmination of a long-standing association with Felix Wankel that had started in 1951, NSU's head of research, Dr. Ing Weiterforde, wishing to garner information from Wankel about the sealing arrangement for some rotary valves that had preoccupied Wankel during the war, Wankel having used rotary disc valves for torpedo engines, while Forde wanted to do the same for a racing motorcycle. The agreement into which Wankel and NSU entered was originally aimed only at this particular sealing problem, but by early 1954, Wankel had realized how the 4-stroke cycle could be enveloped by an epotrochoidal bore containing an equilateral rotor, thus leading, in 1956, to the creation of a compressor based on Wankel's ideas being fitted to an existing moped engine, Freude, a year later, turning the relative motions of the rotating inner and outer members of this machine inside out, thus resulting in the Wankel engine. The fundamentals behind the rotary engine was the ingeniously simple removal of the reciprocating engine's pistons, conrods, camshaft and valves, replacing them all with a curved-sided triangle that rotated eccentrically within a near-oval or trochoidal void that provided the combustion chambers and valves, thus eliminating the energy-wasting need to convert the reciprocating motion of the pistons into the rotary motion of the crankshaft. The result was an engine that was far more compact, lighter, and had fewer moving parts, and was unbelievably smooth compared to most of the wheezingly vibratory motors of the day, while at the same time being quick and nimble for both 2- and 4-wheel drive transmission. In 1957, as the first engine based on Wankel's rotary machinery ran at the Neckarsulm factory, The first NSU Prinz was being assembled in another part of the plant, NSU being keen to exploit the flourishing market for efficient four-wheeled cars, as West Germany had yet to truly begin its post-war economic miracle, with the 1950s seeing most domestic car manufacturers concentrated on miniature cars that were economic to build and operate. The relationship between Wankel and NSU would continue to increase towards 1960, and when news of the new engine broke, NSU became the prey of stock market speculators, bankers, and patent lawyers, with fortunes being made and promptly lost on the continued development of the engine for use in cars, industry observers considering that NSU was a car maker too small to handle the Wankel engine. In reality, NSU was so slow in developing a Wankel-engined car that only by some hasty work in the small print department did they avoid being beaten by their own licensees, Toyo Kogyo, whose Mazda prototype was differentially held back a month so that the NSU Wankel Spider would be released first, becoming the only Wankel-engined car on the market. Eventually, after 3 years of work, but still over a year prior to the car entering production, a Wankel-fitted NSU Prinz was assembled, replacing the conventional power unit with a single-rotor Wankel engine that gave 60 horsepower and demanded free use of the somewhat inadequate gearbox. The Wankel engine, in combination with the Prinz, being seen with interest and concern by rival car builders due to its potential customer draw. However, not all was well with the rotary power unit as fitted to the Prinz and Spider, with the forces and heat applied to the tips of the eccentrically rotating triangle being greater than their constituent materials could stand, while premature wear drained the Wankel engine's energy away, the replacement of these apex seals costing NSU dearly, and only 2,375 Spiders would result from 3 years' worth of production between 1964 and 1967. Nevertheless, the advent of Wankel's rotary engine and the benefits it provided in terms of performance and efficiency gave other car builders cause for concern, and in order to try and remain at the cutting edge of technology, many manufacturers arrived at Neckarsulm seeking technology licenses, including Citroën, which formed a partnership with NSU, and General Motors, which produced a beautiful rotary Corvette concept car that unfortunately never went into production. Citroën would go on to field test 2 batches of rotaries, while Japanese car builder Mazda bought a license to produce their own version of the NSU rotary engine that would first emerge in the 1967 Cosmo sports car, and remained in regular production until the end of the RX-8 in 2012, and single-seat racing use until 2018, temporarily ending 51 years of production until the Mazda Wankel engine returned to sales inside the MX-30 plug-in hybrid of 2023. However, the problems with the Wankel engine, as exhibited in the Spider, proved to be disconcerting to other potential users of the type, and no other car makers would adopt the power unit going forward, though these early teething troubles would not be enough to discourage NSU's ongoing employment of the power plant. Tuned versions of the engine performed well on hill climbs and in short-circuit races, while in 1966, its rallying potential was confirmed when it carried Karl-Heinz Panowitz to the German GT Rally Championship, this sporting triumph being a notable rarity for the busy, overburdened and over-enthusiastic NSU Motorenwerke, who had changed their name in 1959 when Prinz and sport production were entering full swing, 1966 seeing the half-millionth NSU car, since the resumption of production at the Neckarsulm factory, leave the assembly line. However, with car production showing fruit, the motorbike sector, with the exception of mopeds, had been all but forgotten, the company being anxious to rid itself of these associations, including its previous forays into miniature car production. The new models for 1967, including the high-performance 1200 TT and the competition-orientated TTS, but these would only be on sale for a limited time, as NSU poured its resources into the Wankel-engined car division. Such was the confidence in the Wankel rotary engine that in 1966, NSU attempted to climb higher than it had ever done before by creating a Wankel-fitted saloon car that would compete directly with the likes of Mercedes-Benz, the result being the Ro80, as designed by the highly talented Klaus Luther, who had previously created the Spider out of the sports Prinz and would go on to have an impressive career at Audi and BMW. The Ro80's curved nose, wedge-shaped waist, clean-cut flanks, deep glasshouse and neatly truncated boot were almost as adventurous as the Citroën DS 12 years earlier, creating a machine that was very aerodynamic with a drag coefficient of 0.36, while in terms of fine details, the car's headlights sat beneath shapely glass covers, its windows were elegantly bordered with polished stainless steel trim, its tail lights were frameless lozenges, and its indulgently sculpted alloy wheels looked worthy of a Porsche. The innovation didn't end there, as under the bonnet was a larger and more powerful twin-rotor 115 horsepower rotary engine that drove a 3-speed semi-automatic transmission, while its H-pattern gear lever contained a microswitch operating an electrically triggered clutch, thus only requiring the use of 2 pedals rather than the more conventional 3. The NSU Ro80 was suspended by McPherson struts at the front and semi-trailing arms at the rear, a notably prescient design choice that is now commonplace in the modern market, while all 4 wheels had disc brakes, with the front pair mounted inboard to reduce unsprung mass, and despite the engine's inherent lightness, power steering was provided as standard, with the aim being to reduce driver effort as with the transmission. NSU's brave new direction was exhibited during the summer of 1967 at the Frankfurt Motor Show, when the Ro80 made its first public appearance. The car's mixture of twin-rotor Wankel engine power, a superbly shaped and roomy cabin, front-wheel drive, power steering, a converter coupling, and 3-speed synchromesh gearbox with automatic clutch, creating a gem in the West German motoring scene, while its stability, road holding, ride, steering, handling and braking were considered exceptional for its class, as were its smoothness and quietness. The NSU Ro80 was considered by many to be the world's only true modern motor car, as complemented by the presence of the Wankel engine, the car providing a maximum speed of 112 miles an hour, but, if allowed to overspeed, may have been capable of reaching 130 miles an hour on the Autobahn, though in a generally typical manner for automatic cars of the time, acceleration was sluggish up to 30 miles an hour, before truly presenting its sporting prowess beyond this speed. However, while the Ro80 was one of the finest long-distance motorway cruisers available, many of the problems exhibited in the earlier rotary engine for the Spider emerged again on NSU's new saloon, the trouble being that many owners over-revved the power unit, accelerating the wear of its internal tips, the mix of metals used on the early cars causing further degeneration. The result of this over-enthusiastic driving for the rotary engine meant that a badly abused unit could fail after just 15,000 miles, while even well-cared-for motors were susceptible to crippling failures at only 30,000 miles, their worn rotor tips sabotaging the combustion process. In response, NSU provided a comparatively generous warranty by the standards of the West German car industry, replacing hundreds of units at their own cost, though unfortunately, the management had completely underestimated the scale of the problem, and with NSU having lost so much in warranty claims, they accepted a takeover bid by the Volkswagen Group in August 1969, which married NSU at the Neckarsulm factory to the Auto Union Company of Ingolstadt, creating a unified shadow brand dubbed Audi NSU Auto Union. The purchase of NSU by Volkswagen was done less for the purpose of bringing the highly successful Ro80 into their midst, but was more due to their desperate need to seek a replacement for the 30-year-old Beetle, while NSU, at the time, was in development of a smaller family saloon that would have complemented the Ro80 with a single rotary engine, this car being dubbed the K70. Sitting in the market between the Ro80 and the Prinz, and designed by Klaus Luther, Volkswagen used their fortunes to bring the K70 to fruition, but on the condition that instead of utilizing the rotary engine, a conventional power unit from the NSU 1200 would be adopted, thus leading to the clumsy introduction of a piston engine into a car designed for a Wankel power plant. Released in 1970, the Volkswagen K70 proved to be the culmination of all bad things when it came to producing a complementary model for the Ro80, being priced too high for its market segment, while the last-minute replacement of the rotary engine with a conventional piston unit, in this case a range of 1.6 and 1.8-litre four-cylinder water-cooled power plants, was more than evident in its woeful underperformance. Going up against the likes of the BMW 2002 and the Volkswagen Type 4, the K70 was an underwhelming machine, being slow, having poor acceleration, and not meeting its proposed fuel efficiency quotas, the inability for this car to sell being reflected in that it was only ever marketed as a saloon, and would eventually be removed from sales in 1975 in favour of Volkswagen's own Passat and the Audi 80. Back with the NSU Ro80, While the company now had the backing of Volkswagen to cover the warranty claims, the mechanical team continued to play catch-up with regard to ironing out the teething faults of the Wankel engine, with new problems related to the regular use of the engine by customers being identified and implemented as part of a rolling improvement scheme. Eventually, by 1972, the Wankel engine, as fitted to the Ro80, had reached a point where it could demonstrate reliability on par with regular piston engines, and was even able to provide fuel and emissions efficiency that outshone nearly all of its West German contemporaries, despite an attempted smear campaign by BMW, who claimed that the Wankel engine was in fact more harmful when it came to emissions outputs. The Ro80 would therefore continue in sales under Volkswagen's tenure, thanks to its ever-present freshness regardless of its age, but come the middle of the decade, and amid the fallout of the 1973 oil crisis, the fuel thirst of the saloon meant its production rates had slowed to the point that it could no longer justify its continued assembly, and in 1977, Volkswagen opted to replace the last NSU-branded car on sale with the Audi 100. In the end, 37,406 examples had been made during its 10-year production life, and while the Ro80 is an often forgotten part of West Germany's car industry, remembered more for its highly unreliable early rotary engines, the dimensions of the saloon set the trend for Audi's emphasis on performance and comfort that has made it a world beater in the luxury sports saloon market. Ultimately, it was the contrasting success of the similarly sized Audi 100 that sealed both the fate of the Ro80 and the NSU brand in general within the Auto Union NSU combine, and with parent company Volkswagen nurturing Audi as its performance luxury brand in the late 1970s, the Neckarsulm plant was switched over entirely to producing Audi's C and D platforms, namely the 100 and 200, followed in later years by the A6 and A8, which remain in production to this day at this location. In the end, NSU, while now having been wrapped up into the wider Audi marque, presented during its brief period of existence in car building a true innovator that was willing to risk its very existence on state-of-the-art motoring technology, presenting strong and sturdy designs that were hampered only by their forward-thinking and technologically marvelous Wankel power plants. However, even against the backdrop of its more notable car models and ultimate absorption into Volkswagen caused by their problems, NSU was also, at one point, the world's largest builder of motorbikes, and today holds a legacy among the West German automakers that stands alongside the likes of Borgford, paving its way with technological prowess, but burdened by the unreliability so often present when working at the cutting edge.